They're not just fighting in rings, they're fighting poverty, fighting stereotypes, and fighting for a future. But no one's telling their story, until now. Deep in the heart of East Africa, there's a silent revolution happening. Not in politics or war, but in something far more personal, the world of combat sports. From dusty towns to crowded city gyms, young Ethiopians are trading in despair for discipline, and they're changing their lives one punch at a time. This isn't just about sports. It's about survival. It's about purpose. It's about rewriting destiny with nothing but grit, fists, and heart. When most people think of Ethiopia, they imagine marathon runners. They think long distances, high altitudes, and Olympic gold medals. But what they don't see is what's happening underground, in sweat-soaked gyms and makeshift training centers across Addis Ababa, Dire Dawa, and beyond. Here, combat sports are giving a second chance to a generation that's been dealt a tough hand. Unemployment is high, crime is rising, many youth feel forgotten. There's political tension, economic instability, and not enough opportunity to go around. And in the middle of all this chaos, boxing rings and MMA mats have become something no one expected sanctuaries. So the question is, how did Ethiopia, a country more known for its runners than its fighters, become a quiet powerhouse in the world of combat sports? And more importantly, how are these sports saving lives? Let's rewind a little. Ethiopia has always been a land of warriors, from the legendary Queen Yodit, who led armies in the 10th century, to Emperor Menelik II, who crushed the Italians at the Battle of Addis Ababa. Ethiopia's history is soaked in grit and defiance. Ethiopians don't just survive, they push back. And that fighting spirit, it never went away. But in the modern age, it needed a new outlet. Enter combat sports. Now, Ethiopia didn't just stumble into boxing and MMA, it's been brewing for years. Back in the 1960s and 70s, when global boxing icons like Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier were dominating the world stage, Ethiopia was watching. Small amateur gyms started popping up in Addis Ababa, mostly hidden from view, run on passion more than resources. They had no gear, no rings, sometimes not even gloves, but they had heart. By the 90s, some Ethiopian boxers were starting to make waves, not globally, but enough to inspire local pride. They weren't just fighting for titles, they were fighting to be seen. Today, if you walk through the neighborhoods of Addis, you'll find something unexpected. Boxing gyms in alleyways, MMA cages on rooftops, and kids shadowboxing on the sidewalks. One of the most well-known is Nadaj Boxing Club. It started with nothing but a room, a few ropes, and a vision. Now it's one of the most respected training centers in the country. The founder, Coach Fikru, a former amateur boxer himself, had one goal: keep the kids off the streets. They come in angry, he once said in an interview, but we teach them to channel it. They learn discipline, they learn self-respect, and it works. Kids who were once skipping school getting into street fights or flirting with gangs are now waking up early for training, following strict diets, and dreaming of Olympic qualifiers. Real-life stories that hit hard. Take Abel Tesfaye. No, not the weekend. This Abel is a 22-year-old from the outskirts of Addis. His father left when he was young. His mother worked 2 jobs. Abel was angry and headed down a dark path. Then he found boxing. I was fighting all the time, he says. But when I came to the gym, coach told me, if you want to fight, do it here, not outside. I thought he was crazy. But then I started learning. Fast forward 5 years, Abel is now the East Africa lightweight champion, and he's not the only one. Rahel, a 19-year-old Muay Thai fighter, trains out of a dusty gym behind a mechanic shop. She wakes up at 4 a.m., runs 10 kilometers, does school from 8 to 2, then trains until sunset. People laughed at her. Girls shouldn't fight, they said. But Rahel didn't care. Last year she won gold at the African Amateur Kickboxing Championship. Now, young girls across Ethiopia want to be just like her. But here's the thing. Fighting, especially for women, still clashes with cultural norms. In many Ethiopian communities, physical aggression is seen as a male domain. Women are expected to be reserved, quiet, obedient. Combat sports spit in the face of that. So, when women like Rahel lace up gloves, they're not just punching opponents, they're punching centuries of expectations. Even for young men, it's not always accepted. Some families think it's a waste of time, or worse, a ticket to violence. But the irony? The more these kids train, the less violence they bring home. Because combat sports don't teach random aggression. They teach control, respect, patience, self-awareness. Ethiopia's fight scene didn't grow alone. Over the last decade, a wave of international coaches, NGOs, and athletes have been quietly helping from the sidelines. One of them is Fight for Peace, an international non-profit that helps communities build peace through combat sports. They've supported gyms with training gear, workshops, and connections to global tournaments. Then there's Coach Dominic, a British Muay Thai veteran who relocated to Addis to train fighters full-time. "I saw the hunger," he said. "These kids have nothing, but they give everything." Through his help, several young Ethiopians have now competed in Kenya, South Africa, and even Thailand. And they're holding their own. It's not just in local rings anymore. Ethiopians, or fighters with Ethiopian roots, are starting to show up on global radars. One of the rising stars, Nasrat Hakparast, a German UFC fighter of Afghan descent who trained alongside Ethiopian athletes in his early days and openly speaks about the East African fighting spirit. There's also Yared Zeleki, an amateur MMA fighter now based in California who proudly reps his Ethiopian heritage in every bout. While none have made the UFC roster yet from inside Ethiopia, it's not far off. In fact, international promoters are already scouting fighters from East Africa, and Ethiopia is quickly becoming a hotspot. Hidden behind a row of TEF stalls and a rusted metal fence in downtown Addis Ababa is a gym with no air conditioning, no fancy bags, and no mats. Just cracked concrete floors, bare walls, and raw ambition. They call it Lion's Den. What started as a small space to train 3 local kids has exploded into a full-on movement. Young men, and now young women, are lining up at 6 a.m. just to get a spot on the floor. But it's more than just the training. Lion's Den runs mentorship programs, school tutoring, even free meals for kids who stay clean. No alcohol, no drugs, no gang ties. Just focus and fists. The founder, Dagmawi Dagi Tasema, is a former street kid himself. He was homeless at 12. By 16, he'd already survived 2 stabbings. At 18, he found boxing. Now he runs one of the most respected grassroots fight programs in the country. I tell them, Dagi says, this place isn't about becoming a champion, it's about becoming a man, but they're creating champions anyway. One of their fighters, Samuel Sami Gabru, just got invited to an international boxing camp in Turkey. Another, Kidist Alamu, became the youngest woman to win gold at the East African Taekwondo Championships at just 17. Lion's Den is proving that you don't need money to build fighters, you need belief. In Addis, just like in many parts of the world, poverty breeds survival tactics, and not all of them are clean. Khat, a plant chewed for its stimulant high, is a major problem, especially among teens. Add to that alcoholism, cheap drugs, and rising street gangs, and you've got a dangerous cocktail swallowing up the youth. But gyms like Lion's Den, Nadaj, and others are giving kids something else. A high that comes from winning, from discipline, from knowing your body and mind are strong. One former gang member, now a fighter named Mikias, put it like this: when you grow up with nothing, violence feels normal. Boxing gave me a place to put my pain. Now I fight in the ring, not on the street. There's something about fighting that just fits Ethiopian culture. This is a land where pride is everything, where honor matters more than money, and respect is earned through action, not talk. Even in rural areas, traditional wrestling known as gugs has existed for centuries. Young men would wrestle in festivals watched by the entire village. Winning wasn't about the prize, it was about respect. Today's combat sports scene is a modern echo of that. Wearing gloves instead of grabbing belts, throwing kicks instead of takedowns. But the idea is the same: prove yourself through struggle. You know those stories in movies, where someone comes from nothing, trains like crazy, and rises to the top? That's what's happening in real time in Ethiopia. But no one's filming it. No big brands, no fancy documentaries, just raw stories. Like Sinait, a 15-year-old girl who ran away from an abusive home and lived in a shelter. She discovered kickboxing through a self-defense class and now competes internationally, with the Ethiopian flag on her back. Or Baraket, a former pickpocket turned Muay Thai champ who now runs free self-defense classes for women every Sunday in Meskel Square. These aren't just sports stories, these are survival stories. Then came the 2023 African Combat Games in Cairo. For the first time ever, Ethiopia sent a full team of fighters to compete in boxing, judo, kickboxing, and taekwondo. Most had never left the country. Some had never even been on a plane. They arrived with secondhand gear, borrowed gloves, and barely enough money for hotel rooms, but they came with fire. Out of 18 fighters, 7 medaled, including 3 golds. It was the best performance Ethiopia had ever recorded in an international combat sports event. The world started asking, wait, Ethiopia? Fighters? But back home, people already knew. This was years in the making. This wasn't a fluke. This was a warning. Ethiopia had arrived. So here's what most people get wrong about Ethiopia. They still see it through an old lens. Poverty, droughts, maybe marathon runners if they know a bit more. But what they don't see are the new heroes being built inside worn-out gyms, fighting with borrowed gloves, throwing punches not just at opponents but at everything holding them back. Combat sports in Ethiopia aren't just about glory, they're about grit. They're not here for pay-per-view events or million-dollar sponsorships. At least, not yet. These fighters are here to survive, to transform, and to inspire the next generation of kids who feel like they've got no shot. Because once a kid who had nothing steps into the ring and hears the bell, something changes. They stop feeling like a victim and start feeling like a weapon. A disciplined, focused, sharpened weapon. Not for destruction but for rebuilding themselves. Boxing gloves are replacing gang signs. Roundhouses are replacing rage. And hope? It's laced up in hand wraps and dripping in sweat. From Addis to Bahir Dar, from humble street gyms to international tournaments, Ethiopia's fighters are doing what no one thought they could. They're winning a war against hopelessness. One jab, one kick, one victory at a time, and the world better pay attention. Because this fight isn't over. In fact, it's just getting started. If you enjoy our journey, please like and subscribe to our channel, and if you like our content and want to support me, you are welcome to buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box below.